There is a strange kind of silence that exists just before history is made. It lasts only a moment, a single breath. Then, the lights ignite, camera flashes explode like lightning. Thousands of voices become one. "Marilyn! Marilyn! Marilyn!" She turns toward the crowd. A flawless smile appears. Elegant, effortless, almost magical. In that moment, every person watching believes they are looking at the happiest woman in the world. They see beauty, they see confidence, they see perfection. What they do not see is the woman taking a slow breath before stepping into a role she has played thousands of times. Because the smile the world fell in love with was never the whole story. Hollywood gave the world Marilyn Monroe, but long before there was Marilyn, there was a young girl named Norma Jean. And if you truly want to understand the legend, you must first understand the child who never stopped searching for something fame could never give her. Love. Not admiration, not applause, just love. Before the glamorous dresses, before the movie premieres, before the magazine covers hanging in shop windows across America, Norma Jean's world looked nothing like a fairy tale. She was born in Los Angeles during a time when life already felt uncertain. Her mother struggled with severe mental health problems and could not provide a stable home. Her father was absent from the beginning. The family she desperately needed never truly existed. For most children, home is a memory. For Norma Jean, home was a question. She spent much of her childhood moving between foster families and an orphanage. New houses, new rules, new strangers. Each move carried the same quiet hope. Maybe this time. Maybe this family would stay. Maybe this place would finally feel safe. But hope has a painful way of fading when goodbye becomes a habit. Every closed door left another invisible scar. Years later, the entire world would call her the most desired woman alive. Yet the little girl inside her was still searching for the one thing she had been missing since childhood. A place where she did not have to earn love. A place where she simply belonged. Life forced Norma Jean to grow up quickly. There was no glamorous beginning, no overnight discovery, no fairy tale waiting around the corner. She worked ordinary jobs. She tried to build an ordinary future. For a while, that seemed enough. Then history quietly stepped into her life. During the Second World War, while working in a factory that supported the war effort, a military photographer noticed her. It was supposed to be an ordinary assignment, just another series of photographs showing women helping their country. But sometimes, history changes because someone looks through a camera at exactly the right moment. The photographs stood out. Soon, modeling offers followed. For the first time in her life, people were not looking past her. They were looking at her. It must have felt like a dream. The girl who had spent years feeling invisible was finally being seen. But there was something she could not yet understand. The world was not searching for Norma Jean. It was searching for an idea. Hollywood has always known how to create dreams. It takes ordinary people, polishes them, renames them, reimagines them, until even they begin to believe the illusion. That process had already begun. Executives believed her name was too ordinary. Photographers wanted a brighter image. Studio executives wanted someone unforgettable. Step by step, Norma Jean was transformed. Her appearance changed. Her hair became the brilliant blonde that audiences would forever associate with Marilyn Monroe. Her style evolved. Her public image became carefully controlled. Finally, she was given a new name. Marilyn Monroe. It sounded glamorous. It sounded timeless. Within only a few years, it would become one of the most recognizable names on Earth. To the public, it looked like a dream coming true. To Hollywood, it was the birth of a marketable star. But almost no one stops to ask the question that would define the rest of her life. If the world was falling in love with Marilyn, who was still protecting Norma Jean? That question would follow her into every movie, every interview, every photograph, and every standing ovation. Because creating a legend is often easier than allowing the human being behind that legend to survive. And without realizing it, the greatest role Marilyn Monroe would ever play was not in front of a movie camera. It was the role she would be expected to perform every single day of her life. She quickly discovered that fame has its own rules. The audience never asks an actor to leave the stage. They simply expect the performance to continue. Every smile had to look effortless. Every photograph had to look perfect. Every interview had to sound charming. The woman the world admired was no longer just appearing in films. She had become the film. Everywhere she went, people expected Marilyn Monroe, not Norma Jean, Marilyn. At first, it seemed like a small sacrifice. After all, millions of people dreamed of the very life she was living. She was appearing on magazine covers. Her films were earning enormous success. Crowds gathered wherever she appeared. Journalists fought for a single quote. Photographers waited for hours just to capture one smile. From the outside, she had become the American dream. But dreams often hide the things they cost. The more successful Marilyn became, the less freedom Norma Jean seemed to have. Even simple moments became impossible. A walk down the street, dinner with friends, a quiet afternoon. Nothing remained private for long. Every movement became tomorrow's headline. Every mistake became public conversation. Every absence created new rumors. The cameras that had once opened doors now followed her everywhere. For many people, Marilyn Monroe represented effortless beauty. But beauty had quietly become another responsibility. She was expected to look flawless every day. Every photograph would be compared to the last, every appearance judged, every expression analyzed. It was an impossible standard, yet the world expected her to meet it. What many people never realized was that Marilyn herself wanted something very different. She did not want to be remembered only as a beautiful woman. She wanted to become a great actress. While audiences admired her glamour, she spent countless hours studying acting. She worked with respected teachers. She read seriously. She searched for emotional truth inside every performance. She wanted directors to see more than a famous face. She wanted them to see an artist. But Hollywood had already decided what sold tickets. Studios believed audiences wanted the blonde with the unforgettable smile, the funny girl, the charming girl, the beautiful girl. Again and again and again. Each successful role made it harder for anyone to imagine her as something else. It became a strange contradiction. The films that made Marilyn Monroe famous also built the walls she desperately wanted to escape. Inside those walls lived a woman who was far more thoughtful than many people realized. She loved literature. She admired respected writers and actors. She constantly questioned herself. She searched for meaning beyond fame. Yet those quiet parts of her personality rarely made newspaper headlines. They were hidden behind the image everyone preferred. The farther Marilyn Monroe traveled toward becoming an international icon, the farther Norma Jean seemed to drift into the background. It happened so slowly that almost nobody noticed. Not the audiences, not the photographers, perhaps not even Marilyn herself. Because identity does not disappear in a single moment. It fades, little by little, smile after smile, performance after performance, until one day you begin wondering whether the person everyone applauds is still truly you. By the end of the decade, Marilyn Monroe had become one of the most recognizable women in the world. She had achieved the dream millions wished for. But another story was quietly unfolding behind the cameras, a story the public could not see, one filled with expectations that grew heavier every year, a story where success solved many problems, yet could not heal the wounds she had carried since childhood. The world believed Marilyn Monroe had finally found everything she had been searching for. In reality, the greatest battle of her life was only beginning, because the next chapter would test something far more fragile than her career. It would test her heart. And once that began to break, everything else would follow. The higher Marilyn Monroe climbed, the smaller the distance became between admiration and expectation. By the end of the 1950s, she was no longer simply an actress. She had become a global phenomenon. Every studio wanted her, every photographer wanted her, every magazine wanted her face on its cover. To millions of people, this looked like the life everyone dreamed about. But fame has a strange way of changing the meaning of freedom. The more recognizable Marilyn became, the less space she had to simply exist. People expected her to be extraordinary every single day, not just on a movie set, everywhere. If she laughed, it became a headline. If she arrived late, it became a headline. If she disappeared from the public eye, the rumors began before the facts could catch up. Hollywood had created an image that seemed larger than life, and now that image demanded constant attention. Yet behind the cameras, Marilyn wanted something surprisingly ordinary. She wanted to be respected as a serious actress. She wanted directors to trust her with complex roles. She wanted audiences to remember her performances, not only her appearance. She invested countless studying acting. She challenged herself. She questioned every performance. She searched for emotional honesty. Many people saw beauty. Very few noticed the discipline behind it. But changing the public's perception proved almost impossible. Every successful comedy strengthened the image she was trying to escape. It became an invisible prison. The role that had made her famous also threatened to define her forever. While her professional life became more demanding, her personal life became increasingly fragile. Her marriage to Arthur Miller had once represented hope. He was one of the most respected writers in America. She admired his intelligence. He admired her determination. For a time, they believed they had found something stronger than fame. But marriage does not exist outside the pressure of real life. Busy schedules, public attention, different expectations. Gradually, distance replaced excitement. Conversations became more difficult. Silence became more common. When their marriage finally ended, newspapers reported another celebrity divorce. But for Marilyn, it was never just another headline. It was another dream slipping away. Since childhood, she had searched for the feeling of belonging. Another closed door reminded her how difficult that dream still seemed. The emotional weight did not remain inside her personal life. It followed her everywhere. Film sets became harder to navigate. Exhaustion became impossible to hide. Long working days became even longer. Sleep became more difficult. Stress became constant. The audience saw the finished film. They never saw the pressure required to create it. Some people misunderstood her struggles. Others judged them. Very few tried to understand them. As the pressure continued to grow, Marilyn sought professional medical help. She wanted relief. She wanted stability. She wanted to feel like herself again. Instead, the battle became even more complicated. The woman who had spent her entire life trying to build a sense of security now found herself fighting to protect something even more fragile, her own peace of mind. Then came one of the darkest chapters of her life. She was admitted to a psychiatric clinic. Years later, Marilyn described feeling frightened and trapped by the experience. For someone who had spent much of her childhood without control over where she lived, losing control once again reopened old emotional wounds. The world still saw a Hollywood legend. Inside those walls, there was only a woman trying to hold herself together. Outside, the headlines continued. Speculation continued. Opinions continued. Very few people understood what she was actually living through. Yet even during her lowest moments, she refused to completely give up. Somewhere beneath the pressure, beneath the expectations, beneath the image the world demanded, Norma Jean was still fighting, still hoping, still believing that life could become different. She had no way of knowing that someone from her past was about to return, not as a husband, not as a celebrity, but simply as someone who refused to leave her alone during one of the hardest moments of her life. And that unexpected act of loyalty would become the beginning of the next chapter. And the world seemed farther away than ever. Someone from Marilyn's past quietly stepped back into her life. Joe DiMaggio. Their marriage had ended years earlier. Their love story had already become part of newspaper history. But in one of Marilyn's darkest moments, headlines no longer mattered. According to multiple historical accounts, Joe helped support her after her psychiatric hospitalization and remained deeply concerned about her well-being. Sometimes, the people who know us best are not the ones who stay forever. They are the ones who return when everyone else has already walked away. For a brief moment, hope returned. Marilyn focused on healing. She wanted to work again. She wanted to prove that she was more than the image Hollywood had spent years selling. She continued studying. She continued searching for meaningful roles. She continued believing that she could still shape her own future. And in many ways, she did. She formed her own production company years earlier to gain more creative control over her career. It was a bold decision, especially at a time when very few actresses challenged the studio system. It showed something the public rarely recognized. Marilyn Monroe was not simply following Hollywood. She was trying to change it. But changing an industry is never easy. The cameras returned, the interviews returned, the expectations returned, and with them, the pressure returned as well. The audience still wanted the same woman they had fallen in love with, the dazzling smile, the effortless charm, the unforgettable blonde. Yet the woman standing beneath those bright lights had changed. Life had changed her. Pain had changed her. Experience had changed her. Perhaps that is why some of her later photographs feel different. The smile is still there. The elegance is still there. But if you look carefully, there is something else. A quiet exhaustion. A thoughtful distance. A woman carrying stories no camera could fully capture. History often remembers Marilyn Monroe through a handful of famous images. The white dress, the dazzling premieres, the laughter, the glamour. Those moments are real, but they are not the whole story. Behind every unforgettable photograph stood a human being with fears, hopes, disappointments, and dreams that reached far beyond Hollywood. Norma Jean never stopped searching for what she had wanted since childhood, a place to belong, a place where she could simply be loved without performing. That dream was deeply personal, and like many personal dreams, it could not be measured by fame, money, or applause. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson her life leaves behind. Success can change your address, it can change your name, it can change how the entire world sees you, but it cannot erase the child you once were. nor can it heal every wound you carry into adulthood. Hollywood gave the world Marilyn Monroe, an icon, a legend, a symbol recognized across generations. But behind that legend lived Norma Jean, a woman who worked relentlessly to become a better actress, a woman who longed for stability, a woman who wanted to be understood as more than a beautiful face. That is why Marilyn Monroe's story continues to resonate decades later, not because she was perfect, but because she never was. Her life reminds us that admiration is not the same as understanding, that fame is not the same as peace, and that the brightest spotlight in the world cannot always reach the darkest corners of the human heart. So perhaps the real question was never, what did it cost to become Marilyn Monroe? Perhaps the better question is, did the world ever truly allow Norma Jean to exist beside Marilyn Monroe? There may never be a complete answer, but one truth remains. The world fell in love with Marilyn Monroe. History remembers the legend. Yet somewhere behind every photograph, behind every standing ovation, behind every perfect smile, there was always a young girl still searching for the home she had never truly found. And perhaps that is the most unforgettable part of her story. Not because she became an icon, but because beneath the icon, she never stopped being human.